Hey, welcome to lesson 2. In the previous lesson, we opened up the default human model provided by ZBrush, right? So, make sure the model you choose is similar to this one. I'm going to create a sort of alien. However, the idea here is that you develop a creature and that you can be as creative as possible throughout the creation process as we aim to practice, okay? Once the Dynamesh is ready, we'll keep working. We could group all these polygroups and get a single polygroup, but it's better to keep them. Let me explain you why. If I press Ctrl-Shift-Alt, make sure the symmetry is deactivated. So, as I was saying, we can isolate the parts and work more precisely. Although I may delete polygroups later on. To do so, go to Polygroups and select Group Visible. Okay. Now the groups combined into a whole, right? So let's go back and click on X to activate the symmetry. And we're ready to start modeling. First, the face. Smooth the face a little bit. Then go to the menu at the bottom. There are different options such as Clay Build Up, Clay Tips, or Move Topological. As you can see, there are many options, and all of them are really useful. Okay, so click on here, perfect. And start building up your character as you prefer. This is entirely up to you. As you already know, one of the advantages of Dynamesh is that it allows us to homogeneously distribute the mesh when it gets distorted or it stretches. Okay, I'll make this part bigger, perfect. The best part when working freely is that you can stimulate your creativity, and plus you don't need to follow specific steps or a specific model. You can use some references if you want, but it may be great for you if you try to be creative and avoid using any sort of reference. It's a great exercise for practicing. Okay, what about making a four-eyed alien? Perhaps some tentacles instead of a mouth? All these tools at the bottom are enough for modeling your character, and you may be familiar with some of them. Okay, another important thing I would like to mention is that nowadays, 3D printing machines, although they first appeared several years ago, they are still in the earliest stages, and it is still not possible to get a detailed printing. So don't focus too much on details, since it won't be worthwhile, okay? Obviously, the more details it has, the better, although you need to bear in mind that current printing machines won't be as precise as we wish, unfortunately. So guys, try to focus on the anatomy and we'll see, okay? It's still too early to subdivide the model. It needs more details. So, start by modeling the basic parts and then create new subdivisions. I recommend you to work step by step and don't go too fast. Firstly, focus on the topology and the anatomy, and the more complete these parts are, the better. Guys, if you want to work with ZBrush, you need a graphic tablet. Among the available options, you can use Wacom tablets or the Boston, for example, which is also a good option and cheaper than the Wacom, which are the most popular but more expensive, okay? So you have a look at different brands. Although at the beginning, working with a small tablet is fine. Mine is small and works well, so that's it. So as I was saying, have a look at different options and then decide which one you prefer to work with, okay? Well, another important aspect to consider regarding ZBrush is the advantages of working with two screens. So, if you work with two screens, you can use one of them for displaying references as a guide, for example, for the anatomy. Even in this case, which is a fantastic character and it doesn't exist in real life, it's always useful to have a real references handy. Okay. As this is a model intended for printing, it's advisable to add a sort of base or support for the figure. Actually, it happened to me before. I modeled, I think it was a horse, but I didn't build up a proper support. And, well, it didn't make sense at all. So, guys, bear in mind this. Your creation will be printed, and thus it needs a support or a base. So it's time to start adding details. However, as I mentioned before, not all details will be reflected in the printed version. But also, it's important that you bear in mind that the more details, the better, okay? So, apart from these aspects you need to consider when printing, there are other tips I would like to give you. First, make sure you keep proportions and body parts are balanced. Be careful not to leave any unwanted hole somewhere or extremely acute angles. Basically, unwanted stuff like holes or acute angles. So make sure everything is nicely modeled. Then the mesh doesn't need to be continuous. In fact, models can be designed using basic shapes. It's okay. You can combine shapes in an easy or complex way. It's up to you. Just make sure the model is completely hermetic. Okay? Another tip is to exaggerate details, which is kind of what I'm doing right now. In fact, this model is characterized by exaggerated features. Another important tip is related to the size. If you're going to create a quite big model, you can hollow it out. Why? Basically because there's no need to use that much material. It's totally unnecessary. So if the object is big, hollow it out. But there's also an exception or something you need to pay attention to. Let's use as an example the model of a house with the door open. We could see the inside of the house. However, we need to make sure that the walls are at least of 0.5 millimeters or even 1 millimeter. This can be also applied to the case of a face. So the model's walls must have a minimum width of 1 millimeters. Great, so I'm gonna leave it here and keep working. In the next lesson, the base will be already built. I'm going to show you how I made it, so you can also add a support to your model, okay? So guys, see you in the next lesson.